My name is Roxie Houston. Married now, or married name is Roxie Brown. I was raised in Bethany Beach, Delaware, my stomping grounds. I started being interested in surfing when I was about 8 or 9 years old, when my mom used to take me to the beach. The lifeguards had surfboards, so I would sit and just dream. Started surfing in Bethany Beach in 1965. We went down to the Hobie shop in Ocean City and I bought my first surfboard and ollie. An ollie that was 9 feet tall, and I was this little tiny thing, and I was wondering, how am I going to get this surfboard around? I guess I was about 15 now. And I heard that they were going to rent surfboards out, just out on the street there up from the towers. Of course, I had to get a job doing that, so I sat there during some afternoons and would just rent surfboards and started meeting surfers that way. Every once in a while, I would see someone come up on the hill. I wonder, who was that? Because any kind of activity, anybody, there weren't a whole lot of people around. I always noticed everything going on. And then one day he kind of pulled me out of the water and introduced himself as Skip Savage, and said that I was getting a little better, I was getting pretty good, and would I like to be on a team? And I'm like, oh, well, what's that? You know, it's like, well, you'll promote my surfboards, you'll work in my shop and sell the surfboards, and there's some competitions. I said, oh, well, that sounds really fun. On the team, there was a guy named Yancy Spencer, and he was really good. Yancy was from Pensacola. I worked for Skip Savage in his surf shop in Rehoboth Beach. We did competitions up and down from Maine down to Virginia. But then I had to spread my wings a little bit and I had to venture out, and I discovered Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Well, packed my bags and I was living in Cape Hatteras, and I was a happy camper. I loved Cape Hatteras. So I stayed there one whole summer through to the fall, and decided, well, you know, maybe I really want to live in Florida. So I met a girl named Elaine. Actually, I met her when I was about 15 years old, and she was my surfing buddy. And we hooked up down in Florida. And another girl, Mary Helmuth. We were pretty much the surf buddies there. And then I discovered Fort Pierce, Florida. Oh my gosh, a new love. The jetties at Fort Pierce were the ultimate best. And of course, through all this, I kind of put my education on hold. I tried going to school. I was going to the college in Fort Pierce, but darn that surfing. You had to be there when the conditions were right. So I've been surfing on the East Coast, Puerto Rico, and my girlfriend Elaine, and she got married, Tommy, so Elaine and Tommy Moss, they moved out to Santa Cruz, California. And I thought, wow, it'd be so cool to go to Surf California. But I could be a little bit of a cheapskate. So I met this girl, and we're hitchhiking to California from Florida. I wouldn't recommend it today. It was an amazing experience. We were, won't go into all the detail of that whole trip. I did make it back home alive, not in a bad physical sense. It's, you know, when you meet some bank robbers in Texas and they give you a ride from Texas to California, you might be wanted in a few states for a few things. When they would be loading up the trunk, I mean, first of all, I'd wonder, They put me in the driver's seat several times, and I noticed the trunk would be loaded up. And I go, why is it that they're always loading up the trunk? You know, finally I caught on. They're stealing. Yep, we visited several pawn shops, and remember getting up really early in the morning and going, you know, we really need to get away from these guys or we're going to end up in jail. You know, I was just an accomplice, very naive with what was going on. Here they come. Hey, Roxie, Patty, where are you going? Nowhere. All right, so anyway, here we are to California. We hoodwink them to get to Elaine's house in Santa Cruz, and we ran to the back bedroom and tell them you're going to call the cops. Got rid of those guys, and we enjoyed surfing in Santa Cruz. We ended up down in Newport Beach. By the time I was about 23 or 20, I had about 20 trophies. I do know my little claim to fame here. I remember there was a competition in Ocean City, and I met Mimi Monroe, let's see, Joyce Hoffman, Joey Hamasaki, and well, you know, well, it's a competition for Ocean City. So I can honestly say I did compete against #1 in the world. I won't tell you what I placed, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I remember one of my favorite surfing spots, and I literally would start shaking like when I knew that the conditions were right. I knew enough now to check the wind conditions. I knew enough to check the swells. And so I was about 16 now, and I was very much privy to what I needed to look for just the right conditions. But where I would really find it good most of the time would be the Indian River Inlet. And I just lived for getting out there. I would be out there maybe 5:30. As soon as the sun would come up, I was out there. And when the sun was going down, I was out there. But I do remember my very first really big swell when a storm was coming in. And I was not really gutsy in big surf, but I thought I'm going to give this a try. And I would remember I was out at the end of the jetty. I don't know if they were like 9-foot swells, but all of a sudden, I mean, this really huge wave, and it caused my surfboard to smack me right in the face and knock me back, and it literally knocked me out. And it was only like about 10 years ago, I met the gentleman that said, "Oh, you remember me, Roxie?" His name was Paris. I'm the one that pulled you out of the water. I met the man 10 years ago that saved my life. I had a broken nose. I needed like about 8 or 10 stitches. Well, that wasn't the first time. I had that happen to me several times.